Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped off the diplomatic shuttle onto the crystalline platform of Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. The artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth's, and the air carried a faint metallic tang that reminded her of hospitals. Around her, beings from across the galaxy moved with purpose through the massive spaceport, their forms as varied as the worlds they represented. The Zephyrian delegation floated past on tendrils of bioelectric energy, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. A group of Korthak traders lumbered by on their 6 legs, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking against the floor with each step. Above, the graceful Etherians glided through designated flight paths, their gossamer wings catching the artificial sunlight streaming through the dome overhead. Elena had studied xenobiology for decades, but seeing the sheer diversity of galactic civilization in person still took her breath away. Humanity had only made contact with the wider galaxy 18 months ago, when a routine deep space mining operation had stumbled across a Galactic Council patrol fleet near Proxima Centauri. The first contact protocols had gone smoothly, almost suspiciously so, and within 6 months, humanity had been invited to establish diplomatic relations. Now, as she walked through the corridors of power that governed 3,000 worlds and countless species, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The invitation had come too easily, the welcome too warm. In her experience as Earth's premier xenodiplomat, nothing in interstellar politics was ever that simple. Her escort, a tall Valerian with skin that shifted between blue and purple hues depending on the light, guided her through increasingly ornate corridors. The architecture was a masterpiece of engineering and artistry, with flowing curves that seemed to defy physics and surfaces that appeared to be made of liquid light frozen in time. "The council chamber awaits, Ambassador Vasquez," the Valerian said, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested either nervousness or excitement. Elena had spent months learning to read Valerian emotional indicators, but their complex communication patterns still sometimes eluded her. They paused before massive doors that stretched 30 meters high, carved for what appeared to be a single piece of dark matter made solid. The doors swung open silently, revealing the most impressive sight Elena had ever witnessed. The council chamber was a sphere nearly a kilometer in diameter, with no visible floor or ceiling. Platforms of various sizes floated at different levels throughout the space, each designed to accommodate the environmental needs of different species. Some were filled with water for aquatic beings, others glowed with intense radiation for energy-based life forms, and still others existed in dimensional pockets that bent space around them. At the center of the chamber, a platform of pure white stone held 13 elevated seats arranged in a circle. These were the seats of the primary council, representatives of the 13 most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Each seat was unique, crafted to accommodate its occupant while projecting an aura of authority and ancient wisdom. As Elena's platform drifted toward the center, she took note of the beings already present. Chancellor Vex of the Hegemonic Union sat rigidly in a throne of living metal that constantly shifted and reformed around him. His species had once been biological, but centuries ago they had transcended flesh, becoming beings of pure consciousness housed in sophisticated mechanical forms. Beside him floated Wisdom Keeper the Lawn of the Etherian Collective, her form so delicate and translucent that she seemed more like a beautiful thought than a physical being. The Etherians were among the oldest known species in the galaxy, their civilization predating most others by millions of years. They rarely spoke, but when they did, their words carried the weight of eons. The massive bulk of War Prime Krugnax dominated one entire section of the circle. The Devastator clans were a warrior race that had conquered 40 systems through sheer brutality before being forcibly inducted into the council. His scarred hide bore the marks of countless battles, and his 4 arms each ended in claws that could rend starship hull plating. Elena recognized others from her briefing materials. The hive mind representation of the collective consciousness appeared as a swirling mass of interconnected nodes that pulsed with shared thoughts. The temporal entity, known only as Echo, seemed to exist in several different moments simultaneously, creating a disorienting effect that made it difficult to look at directly. As her platform settled into position, Elena felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. The chamber held representatives from nearly every known sapient species in the galaxy, and all were watching humanity's first formal appearance before the primary council. Chancellor Vex raised one articulated hand, and the chamber fell silent. When he spoke, his voice resonated through both the air and some form of quantum field that Elena could feel in her bones. "We gather today to welcome our newest members to the galactic community," he announced. "The species known as humanity has requested formal recognition and protection under the auspices of the Galactic Council. We are here to determine the terms of that membership." Elena stood straighter, drawing on years of diplomatic training. This was the moment she had prepared for, the culmination of humanity's greatest diplomatic effort. Earth's future hung in the balance of the next few hours. "Honored council members," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sophisticated acoustics. "I speak for the 4 billion humans of the Sol system, and for the colonies we have established among the nearby stars. We come before you in the spirit of peace and mutual cooperation, seeking to contribute to the great tapestry of galactic civilization." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled delegates. Elena felt her first twinge of unease as she noticed the subtle glances being exchanged between the primary council members. Wisdom Keeper Thalen's melodious voice filled the chamber, each word seeming to hang in the air like a musical note. "Young species often believe they have much to offer," she said with what Elena hoped was kindness. "But the galaxy is vast and ancient. We have seen countless civilizations rise and fall, each believing they were unique." War Prime Krugnax's laugh was like the grinding of stone against stone. "Humans are primitive. Their technology is crude, their military weak. What protection could they possibly need that they could not provide for themselves?" Elena felt her diplomatic smile falter slightly. This wasn't going as expected. The preliminary negotiations had been cordial, almost welcoming. Something had changed. Chancellor Vex activated a holographic display that showed detailed information about human civilization. Population figures, technological assessments, military capabilities, resource inventories. Far more detailed information than humanity had ever provided to the Council. "Our intelligence networks are quite thorough," Vex explained, noting Elena's shocked expression. "We have been observing human development for some time. Your species shows potential. However, potential alone is insufficient for Council membership." The display zoomed in on Earth's solar system, highlighting the asteroid mining operations, the growing lunar colonies, and the fledgling settlements on Mars and Europa. Then it expanded to show humanity's small but growing presence in nearby star systems. "Your expansion has been rapid," observed a being Elena didn't recognize, its crystalline form refracting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Perhaps too rapid for such a young species. The galaxy has rules about territorial expansion, resource extraction, and the development of military capabilities." Elena's heart began to race as she realized where this was heading. "Honored council members, humanity has been careful to avoid any territories claimed by other species. Our expansion has been limited to uninhabited systems, and we have followed all the protocols outlined in the first contact guidelines." But those guidelines apply only to council members," Chancellor Vex said, his tone becoming noticeably colder. "Unaffiliated species exist outside our protection and outside our laws." The chamber seemed to grow darker, though Elena knew it was probably just her imagination. Around her, the assembled delegates watched with the patient attention of predators waiting for prey to realize its situation. "Let me be direct. Ambassador Vasquez, Vex continued. Humanity's rapid expansion has brought you into contact with several sensitive regions of space. The Kepler 442 system, for instance, contains rare elements that are crucial to Council operations. The Wolf 359 sector has strategic importance for our defense networks. And your settlements near Gliese 667c have disrupted traditional shipping lanes used by Council member species. Elena's mind raced through the implications. Humanity had chosen those systems specifically because they appeared to be unclaimed and uninhabited. The Council surveys had indicated no prior claims or territorial disputes. I was not aware of any conflicts, she said carefully. Our surveys showed these systems to be available for colonization under Galactic law. Galactic law is complex, interjected Wisdom Keeper the Lawn. There are layers of precedent, ancient treaties, and historical claims that young species often fail to comprehend. The systems you have settled have been under Council protection for millennia, reserved for future development by member species. War Prime Krugnax leaned forward, his massive bulk casting a shadow over Elena's platform. Your presence in these systems constitutes an act of aggression against the Council and its members. Under Galactic law, we will be justified in removing you by force. Elena felt sweat beading on her forehead despite the chamber's carefully controlled climate. This was rapidly becoming a nightmare. Surely there must be some mistake. Humanity has no desire for conflict with the Council or any of its member species. We are prepared to negotiate in good faith to resolve any territorial disputes. Negotiation is indeed possible, Chancellor Vex said, his mechanical features arranging themselves into what might have been a smile. The Council is prepared to offer humanity a path to membership that would resolve all territorial issues and provide protection from external threats. A new holographic display materialized, showing a complex document with thousands of pages of dense legal text. Elena's translator software struggled to keep up with the alien legal terminology, but what she could understand made her blood run cold. The standard membership accords, Vex explained. These terms have been accepted by every Council member species upon joining our Great Alliance. They outline the responsibilities and privileges of membership, including territorial adjustments, resource sharing agreements, and military contributions. Elena scanned the visible portions of the document, her diplomatic training helping her identify the key points despite the complex language. What she saw was essentially a complete surrender of human sovereignty disguised as a mutual defense treaty. Under the Accords, humanity would cede control of all military forces to Council oversight. All territorial claims outside the Sol system would be transferred to Council administration. Human colonies would be limited to designated zones, and expansion would require Council approval. Most devastating of all, Earth's resources will be subject to Council taxation at rates that would cripple human civilization. This is not membership, Elena said, her voice tight with controlled anger. This is vassalization. Such harsh words, Wisdom Keeper the Lawn said with what sounded like genuine sadness. The galaxy is a dangerous place, young ambassador. There are threats beyond your comprehension. Ancient enemies, cosmic forces, entities that exist beyond the normal boundaries of space and time. The Council provides protection from these dangers, but protection has a cost. The alternative, War Prime Krugnax added with obvious relish, is to remain outside Council protection. Alone, vulnerable. How long do you think humanity would survive without our guidance? Elena realized she was trapped in a carefully orchestrated extortion scheme. The Council had never intended to offer humanity true membership. They had been studying human civilization, waiting for the right moment to present this ultimatum. Accept vassalization or face the consequences of remaining isolated in a hostile galaxy. I need time to consider these terms, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. This is a decision that affects the entire human species. I must consult with my government. Of course, Chancellor Vex said graciously. Take all the time you need. However, I should mention that our intelligence suggests several hostile factions have taken notice of humanity's expansion. The Devourers, for instance, have been unusually active in your sector of space. Such a young species would be helpless against their hunger. The threat was clear. Accept the Council's terms or face mysterious, hostile factions that would conveniently appear to threaten human colonies. Elena had seen this pattern before in terrestrial politics, but she had hoped galactic civilization would be more advanced. 7 of your days, Echo spoke for the first time, its voice seeming to come from multiple temporal directions at once. That is the standard consideration period for such decisions. After that, the offer may need to be revised. Elena bowed formally, maintaining diplomatic protocol even as her mind raced through possible responses. The human government will give your generous offer the consideration it deserves, she said, carefully choosing words that committed to nothing. As her platform began to drift away from the center of the chamber, Elena heard Chancellor Vex speak one final time. Ambassador Vasquez, please ensure your leaders understand the gravity of this situation. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. It would be unfortunate if humanity were to face those dangers alone. The massive doors closed behind her with a sound like finality itself. Elena walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime with measured steps, maintaining her diplomatic composure until she reached the privacy of her shuttle. Only then did she allow herself to show the fear and anger that threatened to overwhelm her. As her shuttle lifted off from the crystalline platform, Elena activated the quantum communication array and opened a priority channel to Earth. The conversation she was about to have would change the course of human history. Priority transmission to Earth Central Command, she said into the comm unit. Ambassador Vasquez reporting. Code Black. I repeat, Code Black. The Council's offer is not membership. It's conquest. The response came immediately, the voice of Admiral Sarah Chun crackling through the quantum static. Understood, Ambassador. Are you secure? For now. But, Admiral, they know everything. Our colony locations, our population figures, our military capabilities. They've been watching us since first contact, maybe longer. How much time do we have? Elena stared out at the alien stars, each one representing countless worlds under Council control. 7 days to accept their terms. After that, they'll manufacture a crisis to force our hand. Copy that. Return to Earth immediately. We have work to do. As her shuttle jumped to hyperspace, Elena couldn't shake the image of War Prime Krugnax's satisfied expression. The Devastator clans had once been a free species, but they had been inducted into the Council after their resistance had been crushed. How many other civilizations had faced this same choice? But as she settled in for the journey home, a new thought began to form in her mind. The Council had made one crucial mistake in their intelligence gathering. They had observed human military capabilities, but they had fundamentally misunderstood human nature. Throughout their history, humans had never responded well to bullies. The Galactic Council was about to learn that some species would rather burn than bow. The emergency session of the United Earth Council convened 3 hours after Ambassador Vasquez's shuttle touched down at Geneva Spaceport. Representatives from every nation, colony, and major corporation gathered in the crisis chamber deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The room had been designed to survive everything from nuclear war to asteroid impacts. But the threat they faced now was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the holographic display showing the Council's terms, her weathered face grim with determination. At 63, she had commanded Earth's first deep space fleet and overseen the establishment of humanity's earliest colonies. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and negotiated with corporate warlords on the frontier worlds. But nothing had prepared her for this. They want everything, she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of shocked voices. Our colonies, our resources, our independence. In exchange, they offer protection from threats that conveniently seem to appear whenever species refuse their generous offer. President Martinez of the Americas Federation leaned forward, his dark eyes reflecting the anger shared by everyone in the room. How many species have accepted these terms? According to our analysis of council records, approximately 300 civilizations have joined under similar accords over the past millennium, replied Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the Xenocultural Studies Department. Not one has ever regained full sovereignty once they signed. Chairman Wu of the Asian Collective spoke up from his position at the circular table. What about species that refused? Dr. Tanaka's expression grew even more serious. 47 species have declined council membership in recorded history. 39 of them experienced mysterious catastrophes within 5 years. Stellar engineering accidents, asteroid impacts, plague outbreaks, and invasions by previously unknown hostile forces. 7 species simply vanished entirely. Only one, the Koresh Federation, successfully maintained independence. What happened to them? Asked Premier Volkov of the Russian Republic. They became the Devourers. The room fell silent. Everyone had heard the whispered stories about the Devourers, an ancient species that consumed entire worlds, leaving only empty husks behind. They were often mentioned as the primary justification for council protection. Admiral Chun activated another display, showing the current disposition of human forces throughout the solar system and beyond. We have 18 colonies spread across 7 star systems. Our total military consists of 43 capital ships, 216 frigates and destroyers, and approximately 15,000 smaller vessels, including fighters and patrol craft. Our total population is just over 6 billion. Against a galactic empire of 3,000 worlds, President Martinez said quietly. The numbers are daunting, admitted General Hassan of the African Union Defense Force. But we're not without advantages. Human technology may be younger than theirs, but it's often more innovative. Our fusion drives are more efficient than most council propulsion systems. Our AI networks are more sophisticated than anything they've shown us. Dr. Emily Ross, head of the Terra Institute for Advanced Physics, stood up from her position near the back of the room. There's something else, something the council doesn't know about. All eyes turned to the elderly physicist. Dr. Ross had been instrumental in developing humanity's faster-than-light communication systems and had been working on classified projects for the past decade. Project Prometheus, she said simply. Admiral Chen's eyes widened. Emily, that's beyond classified. We're not even sure it's possible. It's possible, Dr. Ross said firmly. We've had successful tests on microscopic scales. With the right motivation and resources, we could scale it up within months. Chairman Wu frowned. What exactly are we discussing? Dr. Ross looked around the room, seeing the faces of humanity's leaders hanging on her every word. Stellar manipulation technology. The ability to trigger precise changes in stellar behavior. In theory, we could cause a star to increase its output, destabilize its fusion processes, or even trigger a controlled supernova. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Premier Volkov was the first to speak. You're talking about weaponizing stars. I'm talking about survival, Dr. Ross replied. The Council thinks they know our capabilities. They've observed our ships, our weapons, our defensive systems. But they haven't seen this because we've never tested it on a scale they could detect. President Martinez stood up, pacing to the window that looked out over the snow-capped peaks. Even if we could build such weapons, using them would make us the monsters. Would it? Asked Admiral Chen quietly. The Council has spent a millennium building an empire through extortion and intimidation. They've crushed dozens of civilizations and turned them into resource farms. At what point does resistance become a moral imperative? The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Moral philosophers argued with military strategists. Scientists presented projections, while politicians calculated consequences. Through it all, one fact remained constant. Humanity had 7 days to choose between slavery and war. It was Dr. Kenji Nakamura, the elderly Japanese representative and survivor of the Third World War, who finally cut through the arguments. My grandfather survived the atomic bombing of Nagasaki, he said quietly. He spent his life working for peace, believing that weapons of mass destruction should never be used again. But he also taught me that there are fates worse than death. Slavery is one of them. When the vote was finally called at 0347 hours Geneva time, it was unanimous. Humanity would not accept the Council's terms. Instead, they would prepare for war. The next week saw the most intensive mobilization in human history. Every shipyard from Earth to the outer colonies began working around the clock. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with military-grade systems. Emergency conscription brought volunteers flooding into recruitment centers across human space. But the real focus was on Project Prometheus. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in laboratories hidden within the Mare Imbrium Research Complex, DR, Ross led a team of humanity's brightest minds in a race against time. The theoretical framework existed, but translating theory into practice required innovations in quantum physics, stellar mechanics, and exotic matter manipulation. The challenge isn't creating the effect, Dr. Ross explained to Admiral Chun during one of their daily briefings. We've proven we can influence stellar fusion at the quantum level. The challenge is controlling the scale and targeting the effect across interstellar distances. How many do you need? Chun asked. For the Council core worlds? Minimum of 15 devices. Ideally, we'd want 25 to ensure redundancy. Admiral Chun studied the technical specifications scrolling across the holographic displays. Each Prometheus device was barely larger than a shipping container, but the exotic matter components required for their construction were staggeringly expensive. Building 15 would consume most of humanity's strategic reserves. What's our delivery method? That's the elegant part. Dr. Ross smiled for the first time in days. Each device contains a modified quantum communication array. We can activate them simultaneously from anywhere in the galaxy. The Council will never see them coming because they'll already be in place. In place where? Dr. Ross activated a star chart showing the core systems of the Council Empire. 13 stars glowed with different colors, each representing the home world of a primary Council member. Every major Council world orbits close to its star to take advantage of solar energy collection. Their cities, their orbital habitats, their defense platforms. Everything depends on stable stellar output. If we can destabilize even half of these stars simultaneously, their entire empire collapses. Chin finished. More than that, the gravitational disruptions would make FTL travel impossible in the affected sectors. Their fleets would be stranded, their supply lines severed. The Council would fragment into isolated systems within hours. Admiral Chun stared at the star chart, contemplating the magnitude of what they were planning. Billions of lives hung in the balance, but so did humanity's freedom. Meanwhile, on the surface, Captain Maria Santos led a different kind of preparation. As head of human intelligence operations, she was responsible for getting the Prometheus devices into position without alerting Council surveillance networks. Her solution was elegantly simple: hide them in plain sight. Commercial shipping. She explained to her assembled team in a bunker beneath the Amazon rainforest. The Council monitors military movements closely, but they barely pay attention to trade vessels. Every day, thousands of ships carry goods between Council worlds. We'll use that traffic to position our devices. Over the following days, 15 specially modified cargo containers began their journey through the galaxy. Each one contained sophisticated falsified manifests, multiple layers of sensor shielding, and a Prometheus device powerful enough to destabilize a star. The containers were split among different shipping routes to avoid suspicion. Some traveled aboard legitimate human merchant vessels conducting normal trade with Council worlds. Others were smuggled aboard alien cargo ships by sympathetic traders who believed they were helping transport humanitarian supplies. Captain Santos had spent months cultivating relationships with independent traders, smugglers, and even some reform-minded Council citizens who were growing tired of their government's oppressive policies. Few of them knew the true nature of their cargo, but all believed they were striking a blow against Council tyranny. As the 7th day approached, humanity held its collective breath. The Prometheus devices had reached their target systems, hidden in warehouses, shipping containers, and commercial storage facilities on 13 different worlds. The quantum communication networks were tested and ready. Every human ship in the galaxy had quietly moved to predetermined positions. Ambassador Vasquez returned to Nexus Prime aboard the same diplomatic shuttle she had used a week earlier. But this time she was not alone. Hidden in her diplomatic luggage was a quantum communicator linked directly to Earth Command. With a single transmission, she could trigger humanity's response. The council chamber looked exactly as it had 7 days before, but Elena's perspective had changed completely. She no longer saw an impressive display of galactic civilization. Instead, she saw the heart of a corrupt empire built on the suffering of countless species. Chancellor Vex welcomed her with the same mechanical courtesy as before. Ambassador Vasquez, I trust your government has had sufficient time to consider our generous offer. Indeed they have, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. The United Earth Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding council membership. War Prime Krugnax leaned forward eagerly, his scarred hide glistening under the chamber's lights. Excellent. The sooner your species accepts reality, the sooner we can begin the integration process. Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 3,000 worlds. Most of them had probably never known true freedom, born into a galaxy where the Council's dominion was simply an accepted fact of life. She almost felt sorry for them. The human response to your offer is simple, she said, raising her voice to carry throughout the chamber. We refuse. The reaction was immediate. Gasps of shock echoed from 1,000 different species. Several council members rose from their seats in outrage. War Prime Krugnax's roar of anger shook the entire platform. Chancellor Vex remained calm, his mechanical features betraying no emotion. I see. That is disappointing. Perhaps you did not fully understand the consequences of refusing council protection. Allow me to clarify. A new holographic display activated, showing human colonies throughout the galaxy. Each one was marked with a red warning symbol. As we speak, hostile forces are moving toward your settlements, Vex continued. The Devourers have been quite interested in your expansion into their traditional hunting grounds. Without council protection, your colonies will fall within days. Your species will be consumed, and the galaxy will barely notice your passing. Elena smiled, and the expression was predatory enough to make several nearby delegates step back. Funny thing about the Devourers, Chancellor. We did some research into their history. Quite fascinating, actually. She activated her own holographic display, showing historical records that had taken human intelligence months to piece together from scattered archives and classified council databases. The Devourers were once called the Koresh Federation, a proud, independent species that refused council membership about 300 years ago. They were subjected to a biological weapon that drove them insane with an uncontrollable hunger. The weapon was developed by council research facilities and deployed by council Black Ops teams. The chamber erupted in chaos. Shouts of denial mixed with cries of outrage as the assembled delegates realized the implications. The council's ultimate threat was their own creation. Lies. War Prime Krugnax bellowed. Human propaganda. Is it? Elena asked calmly. She activated another display, showing detailed technical specifications and deployment records. We found these files in the personal archives of former Chancellor Thex. He kept quite detailed records of his proudest achievements. Wisdom Keeper Thalen's melodious voice cut through the noise. Even if this were true, young species, it changes nothing. The Devourers exist. The threat is real. Accept our protection or face the consequences. About that, Elena said, checking her chronometer. I'm afraid we have a different response in mind. She raised the quantum communicator and spoke a single word, Prometheus. Across the galaxy, 15 devices activated simultaneously. On Nexus Prime, the artificial sun that provided power to the planet's massive cities began to flicker. Orbital monitoring stations detected impossible readings as the star's fusion processes destabilized in ways that violated every known law of physics. The same thing was happening on 12 other worlds. Ancient stars that had burned steadily for billions of years suddenly began to pulse with erratic energy. Solar flares erupted with devastating force, disabling satellites and communication networks. The carefully balanced fusion reactions that powered galactic civilization started to spiral out of control. In the council chamber, emergency klaxons began to wail. The assembled delegates stared in horror at the readings flooding in from across their empire. Impossible energy spikes, gravitational anomalies, and stellar disruptions on a scale that defied comprehension. Chancellor Vex's mechanical voice carried a note of panic for the first time in centuries. "What have you done?" Elena stood calmly amid the chaos, her voice carrying clearly over the alarms. "We've leveled the playing field, Chancellor. Every major council world is currently experiencing stellar instability. Your defense fleets are stranded as the gravitational disruptions make FTL travel impossible. Your communication networks are failing as solar interference overwhelms your systems. This is impossible," Wisdom Keeper the Lawn whispered. "No species has the technology to influence stellar mechanics on this scale." "No council species," Elena corrected. "But then, we're not a council species, are we? We're something new, something you've never encountered before." War Prime Krugnax struggled to activate his combat systems, but the chamber's emergency protocols had locked down all weapons. "When this is over, human, your species will suffer for 1,000 years." Elena's smile never wavered. "If you want to discuss suffering, War Prime, let's talk about what happens when a star goes supernova. The radiation alone will sterilize everything within 20 light years. The gravitational waves will shatter planets like glass. Of course, we've built safeguards into our devices. The stellar disruptions can be reversed with a simple command code." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity had just held the entire Council Empire hostage with their own stars. "What do you want?" Chancellor Vex asked quietly. Elena activated a final display, showing a document that would reshape galactic civilization. The Universal Liberation Accord. Every species currently under Council dominion will be given the choice to remain or seek independence. All territorial expansion will be conducted through negotiation rather than extortion. The practice of manufacturing threats to justify protection schemes ends immediately. And if we refuse? Elena glanced at her chronometer again. In approximately 6 hours, the stellar disruptions will pass a critical threshold. After that point, they become irreversible. 13 stars will go supernova simultaneously, taking the heart of your empire with them. As if to emphasize her point, another wave of alarms sounded as Nexus Prime's sun pulsed with increasing instability. Through the transparent dome of the council chamber, the assembled delegates could see the star flickering like a dying candle. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a choice between survival and surrender. The irony was not lost on anyone present that the choice was being offered by the very species they had tried to extort just hours before. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of galactic power, a single human surrounded by the representatives of 3,000 worlds, and waited for their answer. In the distance, stars began to die, and with them, the age of council dominion over the galaxy. The silence in the council chamber stretched for exactly 17 seconds before Chancellor Vex spoke, his mechanical voice carefully modulated to conceal any emotion. "You would murder billions to make your point, Ambassador." Elena's expression remained steady, though inside she felt the weight of every life hanging in the balance. "I would prevent the murder of billions more, Chancellor. How many civilizations has the Council destroyed through manufactured crises? How many species have been reduced to servitude through your protection schemes?" Around the chamber, emergency displays continued to flash with increasingly dire readings from across the Empire. The star powering Nexus Prime pulsed with unnatural rhythms, its light shifting between normal yellow and an ominous orange-red that painted the chamber walls in the color of blood. War Prime Krugnax strained against the chamber's lockdown protocols, his massive frame shaking with barely contained rage. "Release us from his chamber, human, and I will show you what happens to those who threaten the council." "Actually," Elena said, consulting a datapad that had been hidden in her diplomatic case, "I think you'll find your options rather limited, War Prime. Our intelligence indicates that your homeworld of Devastation Prime is experiencing particularly severe stellar fluctuations. The solar flares alone should have disabled your planetary defense grid about 10 minutes ago." The color drained from Krugnax's scarred hide. Devastation Prime was a fortress world, its entire surface covered in military installations and weapon platforms. If the defense grid was down, the planet was vulnerable for the first time in centuries. "This is madness," whispered a delegate from the crystalline hegemony, its translucent form refracting the chamber's emergency lighting into rainbow patterns across the floor. "You cannot hold an entire galaxy hostage." "Can't we?" Elena activated another display, showing the expanding effects of the stellar disruptions. "The gravitational waves are already propagating through subspace. FTL travel will be impossible in the core systems for weeks, even if we reverse the process immediately. Your empire is effectively cut in half." Dr. Yalith of the Scientific Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a complex force field matrix, pulsed with rapid calculations. "The mathematics are impossible. No known technology can influence stellar fusion at this scale. What you describe would require exotic matter manipulation beyond our most advanced theories." "Beyond your theories, perhaps," Elena replied. "But human science has always thrived on solving impossible problems. When you've spent your entire history fighting gravity wells, hostile environments, and the basic laws of physics just to survive, you develop a certain creativity." Wisdom Keeper Thalen's ethereal form seemed to solidify slightly as she focused her ancient mind on the crisis. "Even if you possess such technology, young one, using it makes you no better than those you claim to oppose. What you threaten is genocide on a cosmic scale." Elena felt a flicker of doubt, quickly suppressed. Every human leader had struggled with the moral implications of their plan, but the alternative was the slow death of human civilization under Council dominion. "The Council has committed genocide dozens of times," she replied. "The difference is that we're offering you a choice. Accept our terms, and the stellar disruptions will be reversed within the hour. Every world will be restored to normal, and we can begin building a more equitable galaxy together." "And if we refuse?" Chancellor Vex asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Then the Council dies with its victims." The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates from across the galaxy realized the full scope of humanity's ultimatum. Some species had never known freedom, born into a galaxy where Council dominion was simply a fact of life. Others remembered independence, but had grown comfortable with the security that submission provided. The prospect of suddenly being released from Council protection terrified many of them almost as much as the threat of stellar destruction. Through the commotion, Elena heard her quantum communicator chirp with an incoming message from Earth. She activated the private channel, keeping her expression neutral as Admiral Chen's voice whispered in her ear. "Elena, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout Council space. They're trying to organize a military response despite the FTL disruptions." Elena activated a subtle gesture that appeared to be adjusting her diplomatic robes, but actually triggered a hidden scanner in her outfit. The device detected dozens of concealed weapons among the delegates, as well as several suspicious energy signatures that suggested some species were attempting to override the chamber's security lockdowns. "Understood, Admiral. Maintain Prometheus readiness and monitor all Council communications. If they're planning something, I want to know about it." Chancellor Vex had been silent during the chaos, his mechanical features processing thousands of calculations per second. When he spoke again, His voice carried a new note of cold determination. "Very well, Ambassador. You have presented your terms. Allow me to present mine." A new holographic display materialized, showing the positions of human colonies throughout the galaxy. Each settlement was now marked with targeting indicators, and Elena's blood ran cold as she realized what she was seeing. "During the past week, while you were preparing your stellar weapons, we were positioning our own assets," Vex continued. "Every human colony is now under surveillance by Council Deep Strike teams. Your homeworld of Earth has been infiltrated by agents carrying biological weapons specifically designed to target human physiology." Elena fought to keep her expression neutral, but inside she was calculating frantically. If the Council could deploy biological weapons on Earth while simultaneously striking the colonies, humanity could be extinct within days regardless of what happened to Council worlds. Furthermore, Vex pressed on, "Our intelligence indicates that your stellar manipulation devices require quantum communication links to function. Those links can be traced and disrupted. Even now, our technical teams are working to isolate the transmission frequencies." War Prime Krugnax's laughter was like grinding stone. "Did you really think a species barely out of their home system could outwit civilizations that have ruled the galaxy for millennia? You are children playing with weapons you don't understand." Elena felt the first real moment of doubt since the plan had begun. Had humanity overplayed their hand? The Prometheus devices were humanity's ultimate weapon, but they were also their only weapon. If the Council could neutralize them while maintaining the threat to human colonies, the war would be over before it truly began. But then, she remembered something Admiral Chun had mentioned during their planning sessions. A contingency that had seemed almost paranoid at the time, but now appeared prophetic. "You're right, War Prime," she said calmly. "We are children compared to your ancient civilizations. But children have one advantage that adults often forget. They don't know when something is impossible." Elena activated her quantum communicator again, but this time she spoke loudly enough for the entire chamber to hear. "Admiral Chun, initiate Protocol 7. Across human space, 1,000 ships that have been drifting in seemingly random positions suddenly activated their engines. These weren't military vessels or colony ships, but ordinary civilian craft. Mining barges, cargo haulers, passenger liners, and even private yachts. Each one had been retrofitted with a single modification, a quantum beacon linked to the Prometheus network. "You see, Chancellor," Elena explained as the implications became clear on the Council's tactical displays. "We learned from studying your empire's history. The key to maintaining power isn't just having devastating weapons. It's making sure your enemies can never be certain they've found all of them." The display showed the true scope of humanity's preparation. Every major shipping lane in Council space was now monitored by human vessels. Every strategic resource node, every military depot, every critical infrastructure hub was under surveillance by ships that appeared to be harmless civilian traffic. "Each of those vessels carries a quantum relay beacon," Elena continued. "Even if you manage to disrupt our primary communication network, the secondary network will maintain the connection to our stellar manipulation devices. And if you destroy too many of our ships, well, let's just say that human civilians can be remarkably inventive when properly motivated." Dr. Yalitha's energy form pulsed with rapid calculations. "Impossible. Our scans detected no such modifications to human civilian vessels." "Because you weren't looking for them," replied a new voice from the chamber's communication system. Admiral Chen's image appeared via quantum link, her weathered face grim with determination. "Council intelligence is excellent at detecting military threats, but you've grown complacent about civilian movements. For the past 6 months, every human ship that entered Council space has been carrying components for our secondary network." Chancellor Vex's mechanical features rearranged themselves into what might have been respect. "Ingenious. You've turned your entire civilian population into an intelligence and communication network. But surely you don't expect a few thousand civilian ships to stand against the combined fleets of the Council." "No," Admiral Chen admitted. "But I expect them to buy us enough time to complete our real objective. A new star chart appeared, showing not just the 13 Council core worlds, but hundreds of other systems throughout the Empire. Each one was marked with a small symbol that Elena recognized as the human designation for quantum entanglement pairs. While you were focused on our stellar manipulation devices, Chun continued, our civilian ships were distributing something far more dangerous. Quantum entangled communication nodes linked directly to the populations of your worlds. The full scope of humanity's plan began to dawn on the assembled council members. For months, human ships had been secretly establishing communication links with populations throughout the Empire. Every species that had been forced into council membership now had access to uncensored information about their own history, about the council's methods, and about the possibility of freedom. You've been broadcasting to our populations, Wisdom Keeper the Lawn said, her melodious voice carrying a note of awe. Spreading sedition and rebellion. Spreading truth, Elena corrected. Every species in this chamber knows the real history of their membership in the council. Your own people are learning that history right now through our quantum broadcast network. How long do you think your empire will last when 3,000 worlds discover they don't need your protection? As if to emphasize her point, new alerts began appearing on the council's communication displays. Reports of civil unrest on dozens of worlds, independence movements demanding answers from their governments, and entire planetary populations questioning their allegiance to the Council. Chancellor Vex processed this information with mechanical precision, and Elena could almost see the calculations running through his artificial mind. The Council faced a choice between immediate destruction through stellar manipulation and gradual collapse through popular uprising. Either way, their empire was doomed. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? He asked finally. Elena activated her final display, showing the Universal Liberation Accord in its complete form. The document was the result of weeks of preparation by Earth's finest legal minds, designed to dismantle the Council's oppressive system while maintaining galactic stability. Complete restructuring of galactic government, she said. The Council becomes a voluntary confederation with no power to enforce membership. Each species has the right to complete self-determination. All territorial disputes are resolved through negotiation rather than force. Most importantly, any species that wishes to leave the Confederation is free to do so without consequences. War Prime Krugnax's roar shook the chamber. You demand the destruction of everything we've built. We demand the destruction of a system built on oppression, Elena replied firmly. But we offer to help you build something better in its place. A true galactic community based on cooperation rather than coercion. Around the chamber, delegates began to murmur among themselves. Elena could see the divisions forming as species that had suffered under council rule realized they finally had a chance at freedom, while those who had prospered under the current system struggled to accept the new reality. The debate that followed was unlike anything in the Council's millennium-long history. For the first time, delegates spoke openly about the Council's crimes, about the manufactured threats and forced vassalization. Species that had been enemies for centuries found common ground in their shared oppression. Through it all, the stars continued to pulse with unnatural light, and the quantum broadcasts continued to spread truth throughout the galaxy. Elena stood at the center of it all, a single human who had just shattered the foundations of galactic civilization. But she also knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Destroying the old order was relatively simple compared to building something better in its place. The real test would be whether the galaxy could learn to live without the Council's iron rule, or whether freedom would simply lead to chaos. As the debate raged on, Elena checked her chronometer. 3 hours until the stellar disruptions became irreversible. 3 hours to convince the most powerful beings in the galaxy to surrender their empire voluntarily. The fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. And for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, Elena Vasquez began to wonder if humanity had bitten off more than it could chew. 2 hours and 37 minutes remained until the stellar disruptions became irreversible when the first unexpected voice spoke up from the chamber floor. The Zephyrian Collective supports the human proposal. All eyes turned to Conductor Vale, the ethereal representative whose species communicated through bioelectro patterns. The Zephyrians had been among the first species to join the Council 500 years ago, and their technological contributions have been instrumental in building the Empire's communication networks. Elena felt a surge of hope, but Chancellor Vex's mechanical voice cut through the chamber with cold authority. The Zephyrian Collective's opinion is noted but irrelevant. Primary Council members hold voting authority on matters of galactic significance. Subsidiary species may voice opinions but cannot determine policy. Conductor Vale's bioelectric field flared with what Elena's cultural briefings had taught her to recognize as indignation. Subsidiary species? Conductor Vex, the Zephyrians have provided the technological backbone for your empire for centuries. Our neural networks process 80% of Council communications. Without us, your government would collapse within days. Which is precisely why your loyalty is not in question, Vex replied smoothly. The Zephyrians benefit greatly from Council membership. Your population enjoys prosperity and security unknown in your pre-Council history. Prosperity built on the suffering of others. Vale shot back. Do you think we are blind to what happens to species that refuse your generous offers? The Zephyrians remember independence. Chancellor, we remember choosing our own path among the stars. Elena realized that humanity's quantum broadcasts had been more effective than they had hoped. Across the galaxy, species were remembering what they had lost when they accepted Council membership. The carefully constructed myths about voluntary association and mutual benefit were crumbling in the face of historical truth. Dr. Yalitha's energy form pulsed with rapid calculations. Conductor Vale raises valid points about technological dependency. Our analysis indicates that 17 key systems require Zephyrian neural network management. If they withdraw support, they will not withdraw support, War Prime Krugnax interrupted, his massive frame radiating menace. No species leaves the Council. Ever. It was Wisdom Keeper the Lawn who responded, her ancient voice carrying a note of sadness that seemed to fill the entire chamber. And there lies the truth that young humanity has forced us to confront. We speak of membership and cooperation, but we rule through fear and dependency. When species cannot leave, membership becomes slavery dressed in diplomatic language. Elena felt another surge of hope as more voices began to join the discussion. The crystalline hegemony's representative stepped forward, its refractive form casting prismatic patterns across the chamber walls. The humans offer a choice we have not had for 3 centuries, it said, its voice like the ringing of crystal chimes. My people joined the Council to escape the Silicon Wars. We were told membership would be temporary, until peace could be restored to our region. That was 287 years ago. Chancellor Vex's features rearranged themselves into what might have been frustration. The Silicon Wars created instabilities that persist to this day. The crystalline hegemony requires ongoing protection from hostile factions in their sector. Hostile factions that mysteriously appear whenever we discuss reducing our military contributions to Council forces, the crystalline representative replied. How convenient that these threats always emerge just as we begin to question our membership. Around the chamber, Elena could see the dam beginning to break. Species that had been silent for centuries were finding their voices, sharing stories of manufactured crises and forced dependence. The carefully maintained fiction of voluntary association was dissolving before her eyes. But she also noticed that several primary Council members remained silent, their expressions unreadable. These were the species that had built the empire, that had profited from its expansion and control. They would not surrender their power willingly. Her quantum communicator chirped with another message from Admiral Chun. Elena, we're detecting massive energy buildups around the core worlds. It looks like they're trying to create artificial gravity wells to contain the stellar disruptions. If they succeed, they could neutralize our devices while keeping their stars stable. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. If the Council could contain the stellar disruptions without accepting humanity's terms, they would be free to retaliate with their full military might. The war that humanity had tried to avoid would become inevitable. She activated her communicator's broadcast mode, speaking directly to the assembled delegates while simultaneously transmitting to human forces throughout the galaxy. Admiral Chun, it appears the Council has chosen the path of technological escalation. Initiate contingency Omega. The chamber fell silent as Elena's words echoed through the crystalline walls. Even Chancellor Vex's mechanical features showed a flicker of uncertainty as he processed the implications of an unknown human contingency plan. Ambassador Vasquez, Wisdom Keeper the Lawn, said carefully, "What is contingency Omega?" Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Something we hoped we wouldn't need to use. Tell me, honored council members, how much do you know about human history? War Prime Krugnax snorted dismissively. Primitive conflicts between tribal factions, crude weapons, and basic tactics. What relevance could your species' violent past have to galactic affairs? More than you might think, Elena replied. You see, humans have been fighting hopeless wars for thousands of years. We've faced enemies with superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and absolute determination to destroy us. And sometimes we've won anyway. She activated another holographic display, showing human colonies throughout the galaxy. But now Elena could see what the Council had missed in their intelligence gathering. Each colony was connected to others through hidden supply lines, concealed weapon caches, and underground networks that had been years in the making. When humanity expanded into the galaxy, we didn't just establish colonies, Elena explained. We created a distributed civilization specifically designed to survive the loss of any single component. Every settlement can function independently. Every population has been trained in asymmetric warfare. And every human citizen carries a genetic modification that you've completely overlooked. Dr. Yalitha's energy form began pulsing rapidly as it processed the implications. Genetic modification? Our biological scans detected no significant alterations to human physiology. Because you weren't looking for the right thing, Admiral Chin's voice cut in through the quantum link. For the past century, every human born has carried modified mitochondrial DNA that allows them to process exotic matter at the cellular level. We've been preparing our entire species for this moment. Elena could see understanding dawn on Chancellor Vex's mechanical features as he processed the full scope of humanity's preparation. You've turned your entire population into living weapons. Not weapons, Elena corrected. Survivors. Every human in the galaxy can now interface directly with quantum field generators, stellar manipulation devices, and exotic matter storage systems. You can destroy our cities, scatter our fleets, even glass our worlds, but you cannot eliminate our ability to fight back. We are the weapon, Chancellor. All of us. Around the galaxy, in response to Elena's signal, 6 billion humans began to act as one. The genetic modifications activated dormant neural pathways that allowed direct interface with quantum systems. Suddenly, every human became a node in a vast network that spanned the stars. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The stellar disruptions that the Council had been trying to contain suddenly intensified, not because the Prometheus devices had been enhanced, but because 6 billion human minds were now directly controlling the exotic matter fields that powered them. On Nexus Prime, the artificial sun began to pulse with increasing violence. Solar flares erupted with mathematical precision, targeting the orbital platforms that housed the Council's emergency response systems. Across the Empire, similar events unfolded as human populations took control of the stellar manipulation devices in their sectors. Impossible, War Prime Krugnax breathed, his scarred hide pale with shock. No species can achieve that level of collective consciousness coordination. No council species, Elena corrected. But, then, we're not a council species. We're something new. Something that your thousand-year empire never anticipated. Chancellor Vex was silent for long moments, processing calculations at superhuman speed. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note Elena had never heard from him before: fear. What you're describing is extinction-level evolution. You've turned your entire species into a collective intelligence capable of manipulating fundamental forces. Only when necessary, Elena replied. And only for as long as necessary. But, yes, Chancellor, that's exactly what we've done. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The answer came from an unexpected source. Echo, the temporal entity that existed in multiple moments simultaneously, spoke for the first time during the crisis. I have seen this moment from many temporal perspectives. It said, its voice seeming to come from past, present, and future all at once. In every timeline where the Council fights humanity, galactic civilization ends. In most timelines where the Council accepts humanity's terms, civilization survives and eventually prospers. What about the timelines where humanity wins but refuses to restore the stars? Asked Dr. Yalef. Echo's temporal form shifted through several probability states before answering. Those timelines do not exist. Humanity always restores the stars. Elena felt a moment of confusion before understanding dawned. You already know how this ends. I know how all possible versions of this end, Echo confirmed. The only variable is how much suffering occurs before the inevitable conclusion. War Prime Krugnax made one final attempt at defiance. Even if we accept your terms, human, what guarantee do we have that you won't simply enslave us in turn? Power corrupts all species eventually. Elena looked around the chamber at the thousands of assembled delegates, seeing hope and fear warring in alien eyes. The future of galactic civilization hung in the balance of her next words. Because, she said simply, that's not who we are. Humans have been oppressed throughout our history. We know what it feels like to suffer under the boot of those who claim to act for our own good. We would never inflict that suffering on others. Pretty words, Chancellor Vex said skeptically. But power has a way of changing perspectives. Elena activated her quantum communicator one final time, broadcasting to every human in the galaxy. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, you've all felt the quantum connection that links us together. You've experienced what it means to be truly united in purpose. I want you to vote, here and now, through our shared consciousness. Should we restore the stars and accept the Council's surrender, or should we let them burn and rule in their place? The response was immediate and overwhelming. 6 billion human voices spoke as one through the quantum network, their decision clear and unambiguous. Not a single human voted for domination. Elena looked directly at Chancellor Vex as the vote concluded. The human species has spoken, Chancellor. We choose freedom for everyone, not just ourselves. Around the chamber, delegates began to weep. Those species capable of tears, anyway. Others expressed their emotions through bioelectric displays, harmonic resonances, or shifts in their quantum fields. For the first time in a millennium, they were witnessing mercy from those who held absolute power. Chancellor Vex stood slowly from his throne, his mechanical features cycling through emotions he hadn't felt in centuries. Very well, Ambassador Vasquez. The Council accepts your terms. Elena activated the restoration sequence, and, across the galaxy, the stellar disruptions began to subside. One by one, 13 stars returned to normal function, their fusion processes stabilizing as the exotic matter fields dissipated. The gravitational anomalies faded, allowing FTL travel to resume, and the quantum interference patterns cleared from communication networks. But, even as order was restored, everything had changed. The Universal Liberation Accord was signed within hours, dismantling the Council's authoritarian structure and establishing a voluntary confederation based on mutual cooperation. Species began declaring independence. some choosing to remain in the new confederation while others struck out on their own. The Devourers, revealed to be the corrupted remnants of the Koresh Federation, were offered medical treatment for their manufactured condition. Many chose to accept, beginning the long process of healing from centuries of artificial madness. Elena stood in the observation deck of her shuttle as it prepared to depart Nexus Prime, watching the galaxy's capital world continue its normal rotation around a restored star. The crisis was over, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Building a new galactic civilization based on freedom and cooperation would be far more difficult than tearing down the old one. Admiral Chen joined her at the observation window, her weathered face showing the strain of the past week. "Think it'll work, Elena? This new confederation of yours?" Elena smiled, watching alien ships move freely through space that had been controlled by force for 1,000 years. "I think we've given them a chance, Sarah. What they do with it is up to them. And if they fail? If chaos tears the galaxy apart without the Council's iron hand to hold it together?" Elena considered the question seriously. In the distance, she could see human ships working alongside former Council forces to distribute aid to worlds experiencing unrest in the aftermath of liberation. Species that had been enemies for centuries were tentatively reaching out to each other, exploring the possibility of cooperation based on choice rather than compulsion. "Then, we'll help them try again," she said finally. "That's what humans do, isn't it? We keep trying until we get it right." As their shuttle jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back toward Earth and an uncertain but hopeful future, Elena felt the quantum connection that still linked her to 6 billion other humans across the galaxy. They had shown the universe that there was an alternative to tyranny disguised as protection, that freedom was worth fighting for even when the odds seemed impossible. The Galactic Council had tried to extort humanity, demanding submission in exchange for protection from manufactured threats. They had expected another species to bow before their ancient power, to accept vassalization as the price of survival. Instead, they had encountered something new, something that valued freedom above security, cooperation above dominion, hope above fear. They had met humanity, and in doing so, they had been forever changed. The stars themselves had been their battlefield, but in the end, it was not superior technology or overwhelming force that had won the day. It was the simple, stubborn human refusal to kneel before those who demanded worship. And across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds where freedom was being tasted for the first time in centuries, 6 billion humans smiled as one.